Hello, and welcome to The Flickering Torch. On today's episode, 3 mechanics you should be stealing. So just a quick preface. I believe the one thing that separates great GMs from not so good GMs is theft. And I know what you're thinking. Theft? We're taught never to steal. Well, as a game master, I think everything you should be absorbing and reading, you should be so ready to just steal parts for your own games, for your own systems, and for your own stories, in fact. So here I've compiled a list of 3 mechanics from different games that I think you should be stealing for whatever game you're running currently. And the first thing I think you should be stealing from Forbidden Lands is their resource management mechanic. Now, in Forbidden Lands, players have these things called resource dice. So every resource in the game, arrows, water, food, is represented by a dice. So a d12, a d8, or a d6. And when people use that resource, they roll that dice, and on a 1 or a 2, it gets downgraded to the next dice. So a d12 becomes a d8, etc. Why you should steal this mechanic? First and foremost, tracking torches and tracking arrows isn't fun. In 5th edition, you're meant to track them almost individually, I believe. So if you're shooting off arrows, you need to be ticking off how many arrows you have. And the only fun thing about that is when you run out of arrows. But, as every GM will know, players will buy enough arrows and enough food, plus 10% of that, for whatever you throw at them. So they're never going to get to the point where they're running out of food, or they're running out of arrows, or they're running out of water. So Forbidden Lands solves this in, I think, a really genius way by introducing an element of randomness. Everyone loves rolling dice, and this is such an easy mechanic to just plug in and play. Every resource in the game is now a resource dice. You're buying a quiver of arrows, that's a d12 quiver. And at any point, you could run out of that thing. You might think, oh, I've got plenty of arrows left in my quiver, and then it takes 3 rolls and you're all out. And you as the GM get to describe exactly how that happens. Like, maybe they're loosing more shots than they're rolling for. Maybe that's for something. Or maybe half of those arrows that Goblin Trader sold them were faulty and they're actually made of like mistletoe and they just crack on impact. And I think that's why you should be stealing this. It adds a lovely new element of dice rolling, and everyone loves rolling the dice. Adds a really fun and really, really dramatic sort of element to your game of you could run out of resources that I think 5th edition specifically is missing. So, that's the first mechanic I think you should be stealing, resource management from Forbidden Lands. The second mechanic I think you should be stealing for your role-playing games is MOS from Night's Black Agents. Essentially, in Night's Black Agents, an MOS, or a military occupational specialty, is something that your character just gets to decide that they overcome once a session. So you might have an MOS in shooting, and in one test in the session, you describe to the GM exactly what happens with your shooting roll, and you succeed. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, this is really overpowered, I don't know if I want to put this in my game. But it's not necessarily a one-shot kill if you choose shooter. And I think it adds this wonderful, more collaborative element to the story. Because they don't say, oh, I'm using my MOS. They have to describe to you how their MOS is used. And it kind of allows you to give the reins of the story back to the players for one cool moment, and that character gets to have that sort of character-defining moment. It also means that your world-class detective or your world-class marksman, they get to have that as their actual specialty. I know D20 systems are really swingy with the dice rolls, so it kind of sometimes feels a bit like, oh, I'm the best marksman in the world, but I've missed 4 shots in a row. This brings the control back to the players. Yeah, I'm the best marksman. Once this session, I get to just fire my bow and it insta-hits. That's such an exceptional bit of narrative control to give to the player. And that's why I think MOS, or Military Occupational Specialty, is something you should be stealing from Night's Black Agents to put in your RPG games. And the final essential thing that I think you should be stealing to put in your RPG games is from a book that Addison jokingly refers to as my good book, because I hold this thing like a Bible. A game I was always trying to get people to play at our club, because I think it's just a book full of wonderful design, and it's not the most complex role system, and I totally understand why some people aren't fond of it because it lacks some complexity, but I think what is there is genius design, and it's been designed for a very specific type of game. Anyway, without further ado, the next system I think you should be stealing is timers from Index Card RPG. And what timers are, you as the GM, when things are kind of getting slow, is you take a D4 out, you roll it on the table, and in that many rounds, something happens. Now, you don't have to tell the players exactly what's going to happen, and you don't even really have to say this many rounds. You can just start rolling the dice and then slowly ticking it down as the players discuss. But you say something will happen, and it adds this kind of wonderful moment of tension. So this is kind of like the music flaring up into those sort of dark, mysterious tones as you're watching the show, and every time it ticks down, the music seems to bring up pace, and we know something's going to hit our heroes, but we don't know when. And I think it just adds this wonderful element, firstly, of tension around the table. People know something's going to happen. And secondly, it will massively and rapidly increase your character's actions. They're going to start acting way quicker. It's a wonderful thing to bring out midway through a heist. If you roll that d4 midway through a heist and you've established that this is your anticipation timer, they want to finish their planning and start the heist before you get to tick that thing down to 1, because they know you're about to throw a spanner in their works. So that's why I would recommend stealing from Index Card RPG, the timer system. So, let me know what other mechanics you would steal to put in your future games, and let me know what you think of my selection here. I'd really like to get a discussion going on what everyone's favourite mechanic is that they've stolen from one game to put in all their future games. And if you want to see more of me, maybe you want to see my actual GMing, be sure to watch Knights Black Agents Blood Feud. Season 1 is all available on the channel, and be sure to tune in at 7:30 GMT for our next season, Blades in the Dark Red Herrings, where I finally get to be a player, and we get to play as this Victorian-style gang in a world where ghosts and ghouls are real. I'll catch you next time, and happy gaming.